welcome to another edition of Wealth Without Borders podcast. And today I'm delighted to have with me Nicole Webb. Welcome to the show, Nicole.
Hi, Howard. Thank you very much for having me.
It's my pleasure. And whereabouts are you in the world? And what's the weather like?
I am in Sydney, Australia, and I've got to say it is perfect down under weather today. Blue sky, I can see out the window. Couple of clouds, probably around 24 degrees, so pretty good.
Perfect. Lovely. Well, hopefully it won't make you sweat too much on the 8 minutes, 8 questions in 8 minutes.
Try not to.
So for those of you who don't know Nicole, she hails originally from the land of the long white cloud, New Zealand, and she moved to Australia as a teenager with her family. And from there, she went on to pursue her dream of becoming a television journalist and a newsreader with Sky News. And she then moved to Hong Kong in 2010 and China in 2014. And the title of the podcast today is China Blonde. So I'm really looking forward to this, Nicole. As you know,
very fitting. Me too.
Yeah, it's 8 questions in 8 minutes, so I run a very tight ship. I'll try to give you the time in between each question. But are you ready to make a start?
I think I'm ready as I'll ever be. Let's do it.
Thank you. Okay, brilliant, Nicole. So 8 minutes. Question number 1. Who's your ideal client?
My ideal client, I think we often hear about people that are going to China to live and work and do business, but I would like to flip that on its head and look at those that are going to support the people that are working in China. So, you know, the spouses or the partners, as they are sometimes referred to, the trailing spouse, which to my horror, I hate. I would rather say trailblazer. I think these are the people that are there sorting out the new life, you know, working out where the schools are, the supermarkets, the doctors, the hairdressers, and, you know, often all in a foreign language, and they find themselves supporting everyone else, and often get to the point wondering, you know, who am I and what's my purpose in life?
Right. An oft neglected group, I have to say. So 6 minutes 56, you've covered this a little bit, I think, in your first answer. But question number 2, what is the problem that you solve for the following trailblazer?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure whether I solve it, but I do identify with it, having been a trailblazer in China, Xi'an, and in Hong Kong. And I think, you know, we all have a love of adventure, and that's why we're there in the first place, even if it is supporting our spouse. And I think what I'd like to say and help solve is just to remember that it takes time to settle in and time to find your feet. You know, often I think it can seem quite an insurmountable task when you arrive in a place like China, as you'd know, and you are out there on your own, and your spouse is off to work doing what he or she does. And I think if you can remember, you know, it takes time, and to really give it the time it deserves, it can be an incredibly enriching and lasting experience, you know, and often even a better one for the trailblazer.
True. Okay, 5 minutes 46 remaining. Question number 3. What are the typical symptoms people experience who have this problem of adjusting to a new culture?
Yeah, well, I think probably the biggest one is loneliness. You know, often when you come to these places and you have no social network, and your kids are off at school, and as I mentioned, your husband or your wife is at work, and that can be incredibly debilitating. And then along with that, if you don't have something of your own, is that loss of identity, which I remember struggling with after being a newsreader in Sydney and moving to Hong Kong and having a baby. Suddenly here I was with no job, no home, couldn't drive a car, and a new mum and no family. And it was quite scary. So I think that's probably the biggest problem as expats, you know, that we deal with.
Yeah, I've witnessed that, sadly. 4 minutes 50 remaining. Question number 4. What are the common mistakes people make who have these problems of loneliness and identity issues, if you want to put it that way?
Yeah, I think with identity. One of the problems is that we often try to pigeonhole ourselves into a certain box, which is what I did as well as a newsreader. I thought, I thought that's kind of all I am. And you forget what you have done over the last 10 or 20 years and what makes up you as a whole. And that can be so many other things besides that work title that perhaps you've been in the past. So I think, you really need to think about those experiences and what you've done. For example, being a newsreader, I was so much more than that. As a kind friend eventually pointed out, I'd been in media for 20 years, and there were a lot of other things that I could do that went along with that. And I think being in a country like China, who is so open to accepting foreigners as well, there's so much we have to offer.
Yeah. 3 minutes 48. Question number 5. What's one valuable free action that people checking out the show today can implement that will help them solve some, if not all, of that problem?
It's probably cliche, but I think it's finding your tribe. As the trailblazer, I think putting yourself out of your comfort zone, stepping out and going to those places you normally wouldn't. In Hong Kong, there are about 100,000 expats. In Xi'an, there was a small pool of 1,000. But I think once you find that one person to have a coffee with, you sort of find that soulmate that you can go through the journey with, and that really builds your confidence.
Great. I can endorse that. Just over 3 minutes to go. Question number 6. What's one valuable free resource you can direct people to that's further going to help them with that problem?
I'm not sure there's one, but I think the whole thing is social media, because where would we be without it? And I think as an expat, social media is something that can connect you with people all over the world that are in, similar shoes to you. And obviously in China, you'll need the VPN, but there are lots of different Facebook groups for each of the cities, as in Shanghai Mommies is always a great resource. It takes a little bit of searching in some of those second and third tier cities, but I think you'll always find, there's a blog or there's a Facebook group that can connect you with like-minded people, and that's invaluable.
Fantastic. Great advice there. 2 minutes 14 remaining. Question number 7. What concept, book, program, or talk has been most impactful in your experience, Nicole?
For me, it was having my own blog. I started an expat blog, Musings in Hong Kong, and I think that just helped to connect me with people from all over the world as well, especially in Xi'an, where they didn't have a lot of expat blogs about that particular city. So I made my own, and then that connected me to a lot of other people that were in the same boat, and people that would contact me through that, looking for things like hairdressers for blonde hair and all sorts of other important necessities.
Hence the China blonde. I can see the relevance.
Yes.
Also the title of your book, I should say. And just 1 minute 22 remaining. Question number 8. What's the one question I should have asked you, Nicole, that I didn't, that you feel would really give great value to our audience?
Well, I'm not sure you haven't asked me, but you've spoken about my book, and I'll be a bit cheeky and say China Blonde, I think would be a very great resource for anyone who's thinking about moving to China, or anyone who's thinking about moving anywhere out of their comfort zone for that matter, because it takes you through all of those trials and tribulations of moving from your beloved country and setting up in a new country, and it sort of gives you an insight into China that many other people don't get in the Western world. So I highly recommend it.
Yeah, me too. And we'll put a link in our podcast so people can find your website and your book as well. So thank you so much, Nicole. You've really packed in a huge amount there. I think you're absolutely right. The trailblazer is often the neglected side of the relationship. So anything we can do to redress that is really wonderful.
Absolutely. Just remember that you are not alone.
Exactly. Thank you, Nicole. That's been great.
Thank you so much, Howard.
Many thanks for checking out Wealth Without Borders podcast. I'd love you to head over to iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review. And if you'd be kind enough to do that, I would really appreciate it. And then if you want to know more about what I do, check out wealthwithoutborders.net.